Back again for the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I am your host, Sean Meyers, joined by my sidekick, Justin Lowery. We've already discussed Monday Night Raw with the Raw recap. Now let's jump right into Tuesday Night Smackdown Live with the Smackdown summary. Justin, the biggest takeaway I had was, at least to me, an unexpected return. We saw the Queen, Charlotte, come back right at the onset of the show. She got the opening segment and finished up wrestling in the main event later that night. Charlotte's back. That's probably a good thing for the women's division, although interesting how she will factor in going forward heading into the second biggest pay-per-view of the year at SummerSlam.
Yeah, I just want to start. I tweeted this out last night during SmackDown. I like Charlotte, great wrestler. It's great that she's back, but I absolutely hate that she's in the title match. And I know where they're going. I can see where they're going with it. Maybe a Becky heel turn. She's going to be upset that Charlotte's taken her moment, her time. They're clearly building to that. Becky was clearly upset that Charlotte's in the match and won. If this was Roman Reigns, people would be complaining hardcore, but because the internet people like Charlotte, it's like, oh, okay, yay.
And if you really think about it, not to cut you off, isn't Charlotte sort of a Roman Reigns mold?
She's the Roman Reigns, I was going to say that, of the women's division. She's constantly around the title. She wins it multiple times, even when she loses it.
Family bloodlines
that gets her that spot. Like, she's lost to Carmella, twice? She's out with the implant injury. She comes back, and just like that, because she helped Becky, out after she was being attacked, gets a match to get into the SummerSlam title match. Why? What reasoning? How has she earned it? She hasn't earned it.
I like Paige, but Paige has done some stuff that, if you look at it in a real-life logical standpoint, doesn't make any sense.
No, it makes no sense. And if you're Carmella or Becky, you both should be upset because, technically in a triple threat match, your odds of winning have now gone down. So they both should not be happy with it. I don't like it. I am a Becky Lynch fan, and I don't know if part of it is, but I'm also a Charlotte fan. I just was looking forward to seeing Becky have a one-on-one match because she's been out of the picture for so long, and even in her promo, her talking about how she hasn't had a title, for so long. She was the first SmackDown champion. She hasn't had it since, and really hasn't even sniffed the title picture. She's been pushed aside for people like Charlotte. It's a shame for her, even though maybe it's leading to a Becky Lynch Charlotte program, maybe a match at the all women's pay-per-view, which would be great to see. So maybe it is leading to something interesting. For me, I was just like, why?
So my thoughts when this happened, and I actually, if you follow the 5-Star Pod Wrestle Twitter account, you saw that there was very similar sentiments to what you said. Legitimately upset and angered that this is going to take away from Becky Lynch, but that's sort of what the company wants you to feel. And they're doing their job in that regard. That being said, here's what I think happens. Charlotte wins the title. That gives Becky even more of a reason to be upset. Becky does turn on her. My issue with that is you have Becky Lynch heel, you have Charlotte face. I like both of them opposite of that. I like Becky as the face. She's getting the great reaction. People should be sick of Charlotte. Maybe they will ultimately make Charlotte into the heel here. I don't know. They could do that. Nothing's been determined. But at least the early hints would be Becky turns after maybe Charlotte wins the title unjustly at SummerSlam. It gets Carmella out of the picture, but it just doesn't seem like the best way to use those two women.
Or during the match, Charlotte does something to Becky, like Becky's about to win, and somehow, not that it's cheating, but Charlotte does something to screw Becky out of the title, and maybe Becky hits the finisher, and she's going for the pin. Charlotte hits her from behind and takes the glory, and somehow Becky can still stay the face because she's the one who should have had it. You took it from me, and then the next night on SmackDown, Charlotte cuts a heel promo saying, Becky, I've always been better than you. You've always been my sidekick. This title's mine. It's always been about me. You're beneath me. You always have. You always will be. And then you can still have that dynamic because Becky comes off as a natural face, whereas Charlotte comes off to me, as a natural heel. It just is what it is. Like Ric Flair was always better as a heel, even when he would have his face turns every so often. I mean, they could do something like that, and then you're really pulling for Becky to beat Charlotte, for the title, and maybe that's what leads into the all-women's pay-per-view.
Sometimes I feel like this company, and I'll go back years ago to Dolph Ziggler right after his cash-in on Alberto Del Rio, where they did like a double switch with them. Sometimes it feels like this company thinks it's better to turn someone and not have them win the title than have them just win the title in a more direct way. And I feel like they might think that with Becky Lynch. Oh, you're not going to win the title at SummerSlam, Becky, but it'll be better for you in the long run. And then you have to really hope and pray that the creative team gets it right with that person instead of just saying, you know what, we are going to put the title on Becky now. She's earned it as a face against Carmella. It's a very simple formula. I'm concerned they're going to overthink this one, and it's going to end up basically putting Becky to a spot where she never gets over the hump, and she ultimately ends up not winning the title in 2018, which would be a shame to me.
I agree, but I have to. I'm going to try to think positive here because I'm always pretty negative on here about the creative decisions. That they do have a plan in place, and and the way they're doing it, I hate in the women's division. They always play the best friends card. You don't really see that in the men's, Natalia, Ronda, Sasha, Bayley, now Becky, Charlotte. They always have to be like, ooh, best friends, yay, we're women, we're besties. I think that they deserve better than that, stuff. But I could really see, Evolution, that pay-per-view, the Full Horsewomen. These women were very important to this women's revolution, as you call it. You have Sasha versus Bayley, in a match. And you have Becky versus Charlotte in a match. Starting with this little feud that they're starting here at SummerSlam. And then you have all four women in two very important matches all against each other, which could actually be something kind of special.
I like that idea. I just hope that they don't give Becky ultimately the same treatment that Asuka got, where she just,
Yeah.
I mean, what if Carmella ends up getting a victory over both of these two? I mean, well, they're continuing the Charlotte-Becky feud, but Carmella goes forward as champion. Then it's almost like, well, that feud doesn't really feel as important if neither one of them have the title.
Aren't they running out of challengers with Carmella too? Like, okay,
Naomi hasn't, but I mean, right now she's not even really doing anything, so she's really the only other name that you could throw out there as a legitimate challenger going forward, unless you call up someone from NXT in the process. But yeah, I would think Becky and Charlotte are the last two. I mean, Charlotte's already challenged after dropping the title. Asuka challenged twice. Now you think you're getting Becky, you're really getting Becky and Charlotte. But yeah, I mean, if Carmella hangs on after this, you could pretty much say she's defeated all of the top faces on SmackDown and found a way to do it despite being really about half the talent that some of them are.
Carmella promo, though?
Yeah, it was good, but I mean, that's like Alexa Bliss light, because I feel like Carmella does everything that Alexa Bliss has already done with success.
Well, their characters are kind of the same, but they both are very good on the mic. I mean, and she said stuff that everybody says on the internet about her. It was very real because she was saying exactly what you said, what we've all said about her, and it made it real. And I like that stuff. I like when they take real reality and put it into a match or a promo.
So Charlotte is back. She immediately gets a title match at SummerSlam as a result of her victory over Carmella. It'll be a triple threat. Might not be the only triple threat that SmackDown has for a title at SummerSlam. It's looking more and more like my prediction could be right, Justin, with Shinsuke Nakamura again getting partially involved in the Randy Orton and Jeff Hardy storyline that continued this past week. It started with Orton and Hardy. Hardy calling out Randy Orton. Orton comes out, hesitant to get into the ring as a true heel would, and then Nakamura blindsides Jeff Hardy and ultimately gives him a Kinshasa. Then it's the Nakamura and Hardy stare down. They don't come to blows, and then Orton, just really continues to take out aggression on Jeff Hardy. Great heel work once again by him. He ultimately basically washed off the face paint that Jeff Hardy's become so associated with in recent weeks. This Randy Orton's really good, Justin. It sort of makes people uncomfortable with what he's doing, but I think that works in this scenario. He's doing stuff that almost no other heel in the company is doing right now at this time.
Yeah, I also, Randy, ton of credit. I also want to give some credit to Jeff Hardy. I think, they're both playing off each other really well. I mean, 2 weeks ago, when Randy Orton did the thing with the ear and stuff, I mean, Jeff clearly had to, say, that's okay. Maybe it was his idea. I mean, no one really knows. That made me cringe. Like, the thought of that actually made, and wrestling doesn't really do that to me. I had to turn away because I'm just like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, I can't watch that. And that never happens. That was very real. Everything they're doing with Jeff, the psychology of it, taking away the face paint, like, that's actually really good stuff. We talked about psychology of wrestling earlier with the selling. There's a lot of that psychology going on in this feud, and it's really paying it off because there hasn't been a lot of, like in-ring work with the two of them. It's all attacks, promos, the psychology of it, and I'm really digging it right now.
The I guess hangman's DDTs, maybe you'd call them. I don't know if they have a technical term that Orton's been giving Jeff Hardy. The one to the outside this past week, man, that looks like that could be a career ender. So hopefully they pull stuff off like that safely. I know Jeff Hardy has been banged up, but the fact that he's on TV almost every week, I get the feeling that he's going to be good to go at SummerSlam. But Nakamura again gets involved and doesn't really interact with both of them because he and Randy are sort of just standoffish at this point. But his involvement in this storyline probably needed for Nakamura because he doesn't have anything else to do. Do you think that's going to help or hurt this ultimately?
It's going to help. It's going to hurt, I think, the feud because, I mean, they don't need a third person. There's clear a feud between them, but that's creative having nothing else to do with Nakamura, which is a shame. And I'm not blaming Nakamura here. Like, there's somebody else that can't challenge him for the U.S. title. Like, why can't you separate the two? Like, there's no, Jeff and Randy doesn't need the belt. And there's somebody else that could probably, who's not getting TV time or a match, who can maybe use the feud for the U.S. title. I'm sure you can find somebody to wrestle Nakamura for the U.S. title. I will say,
a guy maybe like, I know, again, we go back to people who aren't featured a lot. If you had had Ty Dillinger on TV for the last 3 months, that's a guy that, in terms of crowd reaction, yeah, maybe you could build him up to a point where he's in a situation like that.
He has a catchy gimmick that people love to do the 10. It could have worked, especially with a smart crowd like in New York. They would have been all into it. I mean, we saw him down in NXT. The crowd really got into his gimmick and his matches.
And I don't think he's a great talent, but I think he's good enough that every now and then you could throw him in there. Maybe you want to have even a bigger challenger for SummerSlam. I get that, but there's certainly, to your point, plenty of talent that could have been put in. But maybe it's just conservation of storylines. Maybe they don't think they have enough time to have two separate storylines for those type of things.
Well, then you take away, certain segments that are kind of meaningless. I mean, there are things, even on a 2-hour Smackdown, that you can go, do they really need that segment? Use better use of your time. And, that's all I'm asking. Because heel Nakamura, to me, is actually kind of funny. When he was in the ring and he attacked Jeff and he comes out and he's doing the Jeff Hardy thing, that made me chuckle. I mean, especially after his horrible face run, this has given him a little bit of life. But I like we said, I do think there's other talent that could be used, against him.
Speaking of talent that had not been used recently, there's been a pair of tag teams who have been sort of non-factors during the run of the Bludgeon Brothers over the past couple months. Yes, Daniel Bryan and Kane got their shot. Potentially, we could be seeing the New Day get another shot. But the Usos and the Bar were featured on SmackDown. And not only were they featured, they got, I think, a 3-segment match that turned out to be absolutely stellar. Ultimately, the Bar won this match. The Bar has been used very sparingly since coming over to SmackDown. These two guys, some people aren't real big fans of Sheamus, and I get that, but they are a very talented tag team. They put on quality matches, and they certainly delivered again on Tuesday night. To me, the best match on SmackDown, no doubt, this week goes to these two tandems, and ultimately the Bar gets the opportunity to at least contend for the titles at SummerSlam. I don't think they're going to win the match the next week against the New Day. It probably will be the New Day challenging the Bludgeon Brothers. But a great match, and, I think these are two teams that show why SmackDown is light years ahead of Raw in terms of tag team wrestling now.
Oh, it is ahead of them in in-ring action. I mean, having the New Day go for the tag team titles again is kind of repetitive. We talk about Charlotte, the Roman Reigns of the women's division. Well, they're the Roman Reigns of the tag team division.
Well, it should really. I mean, Sanity beat them at the last pay-per-view, albeit in a pre-show match. You thought maybe Sanity would sort of leapfrog ahead of the New Day temporarily.
Right, but that's heel versus heel. I mean, they're kind of back in the corner. There's basically two face tag teams that have, it's either the Usos or the New Day. I mean, they just go back and forth trading, title shots because they're the only two really face teams.
Yeah, Anderson and Gallows, to me, I mean, they had a title shot, but they're not on par with these other teams.
Right, exactly. So they only have two options. So, I mean, well, the work is great. The division itself still kind of poor because there's not enough people to choose from. And the Bar, if you're not going to use the Bar as a tag team anymore, why not Cesaro versus Nakamura for the U.S. title? Or even Sheamus. I mean, just going back to what we talked about previously, trying to find somebody for him. Great match, like you said. It was, really, fun to watch. I'm going to think the New Day is going to lose. I mean, they don't really need the tag team titles again, do they? I mean, I don't think.
I would agree that, they probably won't win the titles, but do you think the New Day wins next week to go on to SummerSlam at least?
Yes, absolutely. Oh, yeah. I'm already, in my mind, it is the New Day, because they're not going to have the Bar. That would be heel versus heel.
Is there any scenario, because we know Cesaro's been a guy that's gotten a really good face reaction, do you maybe, to your point, sort of turn, because the Bar on SmackDown, they're not like real dastardly heels at this point. They're sort of neutral. I mean, they are heels per se, but they haven't really done anything that makes them heels. And if I'm correct, I think they won this match cleanly. So if you really wanted to, you could sort of put them on the fence for this storyline if you wanted to get a fresh team to challenge. And I think the fans would get behind, especially Cesaro, but overall they would get behind the Bar if they were to challenge against the Bludgeon Brothers.
I mean, I agree with that. It would be fresh. It would be interesting, even if you make them, face. But do you really see the New Day being left off the SummerSlam card? Like, if they don't win that match, what did the New Day do for SummerSlam? Nothing. I mean, I could see the Bar not getting a match on SummerSlam because they really haven't done much. I think they're going to put the New Day on the card. And, that's just what I think is going to happen. I haven't really entertained anything else.
When they were having this match between the Usos and the Bar, they had the regular commentary team, and then they had the New Day with their own table, which I thought was kind of interesting. And they had pancakes lining the table, and they actually sort of mixed the audio. They switched it back and forth. They would cut in from the regular announce team to the New Day, and the New Day was mostly screaming and cracking jokes. But I believe maybe Woods, I'm not sure who exactly it was, one of them noted that the Usos have never wrestled on the main card of SummerSlam. And I know that was a storyline about WrestleMania this year. If that's true about SummerSlam as well, you have to feel like some of these tag teams are just getting screwed when it comes to the big-time pay-per-views. I mean, if that is true, again, I didn't research it, but the New Day did say it. How do you have something like that happen, where some of your best tag teams that have been in the company for now closing in on a decade aren't featured at your biggest events of the year? It seems like this tag team wrestling really just can't consistently get over the hump in this company.
And that's basically it. I mean, well, now since there's two tag, belts, you'll have two tag team matches on the card, but that's it. There's not a secondary tag team feud. You never see another tag match with two tag teams just because there's a feud going on. It's only the tag team title match. Unless
it's like the quasi tag teams, like a Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn against Strowman and Lashley or something.
Two feuds interacting in one match. You don't get secondary storytelling in a tag team division. You just get that one storyline, and if you're not the champ or the challenger, you're not on TV unless you're there to lose a match to the challenger a week before a show.
Wouldn't it make more sense for Raw to have a deeper tag team division since they have the 3-hour show, and then they could realistically do stuff like that instead of having SmackDown where in any given week 4 of your tag teams are probably going to be off of TV?
I totally agree, but instead on Raw, Raw, 3 hours, it gives you so much more time to do that stuff, but instead we get Lashley forgetting the words of Rock and Robin. That's what we get instead. What would you rather see? Me as a wrestling fan would rather see a great tag team match with another feud. that sets up the next challenger. That makes you care about another tag team. That's the problem where there's not enough challengers because nobody cares about the other tag teams. That's an issue.
It certainly is an issue. I mean, SmackDown has great talent. SmackDown has, I think, consistently 1 or 2 great matches a week. But it seems like that even though it's probably the better of the 2 shows, it just seems like there's still missed opportunities on the blue brand as well. And I think that the tag team division and to an extent the women's division, both this week, kind of, that point was proven that maybe they don't always go the best direction. Any other takeaways from SmackDown? For me, glad to see Zelina Vega get a match. That's always interesting and exciting to see someone make their main roster in-ring debut. And Samoa Joe, he's great on the mic. Just another terrific promo. I hope that AJ and he really are set up as maybe the second biggest match at SummerSlam, but they'll probably not be. They'll probably be maybe the 3rd or 4th or maybe 5th biggest match because while they try to make it out that title is the biggest in the company, it just doesn't feel like it a lot of times, despite the fact that those 2 guys are probably going to put on a clinic.
Well, everything on Raw comes off more important, right? Like, Lesnar Roman's going to be your most important match. Braun and Kevin Owens will probably get more billing because Strowman's money bait guy and Strowman's pretty big face and it's a Raw match. I expect that match to go on maybe 3rd to last. Well, you'll have that match, a segment, a buffer match, and then your Lesnar Roman match. That's maybe my thinking, my guess. I mean, we'll see. It's a shame. It's their title too. Like, that's their title, title.
Miz and Daniel Bryan, I think, will be bigger than the WWE title match as well.
You're right. You're right there.
Is that a problem, or is that speaks to the depth of the talent in the company?
That's a good question. Does the title make the man, or does the man make the title? I mean, AJ's merch sales are strong.
He's had a reign of what? It's got to be like well over. Is he at a year at this point? He's closing in on close to a year.
When did he win the title?
I want to say it was like November.
Was it November?
Yeah, because remember, Jinder defended it at SummerSlam against Nakamura a year ago. But, to have like a 10-month title reign in this era is pretty significant.
Yeah. In the back of your mind, you got to wonder if they want him to hold on to it so he could beat CM Punk's record, because that record is with the WWE title.
Oh, I think, Lesnar probably already has, even though no one gives any credence to that.
Well, sane wrestling fan actually thinks that's legit. Plus, it's a Universal title that doesn't have much history to it.
Yeah, Heyman and Kurt Angle said he's the worst Universal champion in history, and I just giggled because, Finn Balor had the title for one day, had to give it up because of injury. Owens had a pretty good reign. I liked Owens' reign. Thought it could have been better if it culminated with him and Chris Jericho. And then Goldberg was the champion, and I don't think ever defended it, right? He defended it in the match that he lost it at WrestleMania.
Right, yeah. He didn't win, yeah, right.
So, they've had really one legitimate champion out of 4 in the history of the Universal title. So, that's a joke. So, maybe the WWE Championship on SmackDown is the most prestigious. It just, to me, it doesn't feel as significant as it should heading into SummerSlam.
I think it's because it's on SmackDown. If you switch the titles, you get a whole different vibe. It's just because Vince and company view SmackDown as the B show, Raw is the A show, and whatever title's on each show will always get that type of billing. That's just the way it is.
That's going to do it for this week's SmackDown summary. We've already had the Raw recap. You can go and check both these out on our YouTube channel. Make sure that you like and subscribe. Also, go back and check out all the old videos. We had a very successful one, our interview with Rennie Detour, that was posted from last week. Plus, all of the old Raw recaps, SmackDown summaries, and trending topics are on there as well. And you can follow us on Twitter. 5-Star Pod Wrestle is the handle. Plus, Justin and I each have our personal Twitter handles up throughout the show. But for now, that's going to do it for this edition of the 5-Star Podcast Wrestling. Thanks to Justin Lowery. Sean Meyers signing off, telling you to tune in next week to the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling.